Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Malesha Taylor. I am going to be the host for this evening's talk. I am the founder and the president of museSalon Collaborative, which is a 501c3 art services organization. And we are the Curator-in-Residence with Art on the Atlanta BeltLine this year. What we do is we transform communities through the power of art, culture, and collaboration. We equip artists, initiatives, and institutions with resources and programs to make greater impact. And these are built on the ideas around the term salon, which we are doing right now, we are gathering, and also the term muse, which is where one draws creative inspiration. So our work amplifies the artist's role as a change agent or a cultural guardian or a Jaylee in our village communities. And over this past decade, I, as the founder and vocal artist, have used my vocal instrument to tell stories of resilience, memory, prophecy, and presence through collaborative projects with visual artists like Charmaine Minifield, with historians, with activists, with academics, and youth. Built upon my other practice as a professor, I curate programs that spark community dialogue, interdisciplinary collaboration, and transformative experiences that do more than entertain. I'm currently writing an autoethnography entitled Transcending Performance, Exploring Black Liberatory Praxis in Vocal Arts. And Capoeira has been a part of that journey for me. I don't know if you guys know that, but I have had my children in Capoeira for the past year and a half. And during that time, I've learned the significance of ritual, singing and ritual in Black spaces. And that was what we used to do in Africa. And it's something that I'm hoping that we can come back to more. And being that I'm a practitioner of vocal arts from a classical background, I've been exploring how to liberate my vocal instrument and come out of the confines of academia and Eurocentric forms and come back into my roots and explore the ritual practice of singing as an African-American woman, as a Black woman. And so today our special guests are Chicago Erik Murray, who is also known as Contramestre Chicago. And we also have Tyrone Real Murray, and I will read their bios. So Chicago, Contramestre Chicago, was born in Chicago's South Side on May 23rd, 1969. Growing up on the South Side, he benefited from a rich culture that included various dances and musical forms. In addition, Chicago was taught karate by the legendary sensei Gregory Jocko, learning to be fearless. In 1992, he began walking the path of Capoeira Angola with his mestre, João Grange. He is still on the path until today. Real, who is also Tyrone Murray, was born in Jamaica, Queens on March 30th, 1976, and moved to Atlanta during his high school years in the 90s. Real was exposed to a Southern international marketplace of culture, song, and dance. And in late 1996, he met Capoeira Angola and has been in a relationship ever since. Thank you both for being here today. Thank you so much for the beautiful work that you do. As you all know or may not know, my 3 kids are in class with Real every Saturday at Gallery 992, and we've been doing that for over a year. And it's been really beautiful to have Real as their teacher. He is absolutely amazing. He is also a public school teacher, so shout out to the teachers. And then I heard Mr. Murray that you are is it a speech pathologist?
No, a behavior specialist consultant. I work in behavioral health. Yeah.
Behavioral health. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Wonderful. Would either of you like to add more to your bio or say more about yourself and your practice before we go into questions?
No, I'm satisfied.
You're good?
Yeah.
Raya, would you like to add to your bio or your background?
No, that's fine. I
Your,
think what was said is more than enough.
you think so?
I
Okay,
think so.
wonderful. All right. So let's begin with our questions. I want us to, well, first of all, everyone, Real is going to be leading a workshop on our Juneteenth festival on the Atlanta BeltLine. That is going to be June 18th, the Saturday, which is the eve of Juneteenth. But June 19th is also Father's Day. So we're going to recognize Juneteenth together in celebration at Gordon White Park in the West End. We'll be there from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And Real will bring the group and kids and families together in a beautiful ritual of Capoeira class. And also, if any of you would like to get a little more immersed into the practice, this coming Saturday, we will be at Gallery 992. You're welcome to stop by between the hour of between 4 and 5 o'clock p.m. to immerse yourself more after hearing this conversation. So if you're still curious and would like to experience a little bit before we do our great festival, come out and support. And class is $5 a person. And so that payment does go to Real. All right, so let's dive into the questions. First of all, Real, what is Capoeira and how is it distinct to other martial arts?
Well, Malesha, in short, capoeira is a martial art. It's disguised with dance, and it was created by Africans that were enslaved in Brazil. But it's a martial art. Some would even add in other details to say it's a cultural expression, it's community, it's religion, it's everything. It's the air we breathe. But in short, it is a martial art, and it's a martial art that has been disguised due to the circumstances and incorporated some dance and music to disguise the art form, the actual martial art aspect of it.
Beautiful. I recall in a workshop that you gave to the kids a few weeks ago that you mentioned Capoeira's distinction with karate or its historical connection to karate. Can you break down its difference to the other martial arts groups? So jujitsu, karate, taekwondo, we have a lot of different types of martial arts. Obviously, they're different by region and culture, but what makes Capoeira different from other martial arts?
The interesting thing with capoeira that a lot of people tend to look over or overlook is that it's African. And you look at the books, the origin, the foundation of it, it has an African origin and basis. And I think a lot of people tend to argue with the different art forms, and it becomes a challenge of the minds to determine, well, who originated this art form and what was its first name. Whereas with capoeira, that argument isn't there. It's just its origins is African. So within itself, there isn't any major separation from its originality. Whereas when you just start discussing other art forms, it becomes like I said, a large discussion that people are saying, well, no, that's not true, and this is the foundation, and this is its origin. With capoeira, we don't go through that. From walking in the door, you already understand that you're doing an African art form. You're participating in an African cultural experience. And I think that was important for the children to know, because when they look to compare it to some of the other forms, they're not thinking of that cultural significance that plays a major part in just the art itself in martial arts. I think that's very unique when we think about martial arts.
Absolutely. And I know many of us have a lot of folks probably don't realize that martial arts originated in Africa, or that there was an actual martial art from Africa. Because when we think of martial arts as regular folks, we think of most of the Asian practices. We don't think of Africa as having a martial art. And many people just don't even know capoeira exists. It's kind of like a cool underground experience that's like, oh, wow, it's exotic, it's different, it's not as popular as the other martial arts. And so I thought it was important to lift up its distinction and also its history. Thank you, thank you. Mr. Murray, Mestre, what would you like to add about capoeira? Can you break down Angola capoeira? Why is there a difference between Angola capoeira and capoeira? I've noticed, at least when I started with capoeira, I started with an Angola group. And I noticed that there were other groups in the same city that were a little more mixed culturally, folks from Brazil, and they had different movements. So can you break down Angola capoeira?
So, you know, capoeira Angola or Angolan capoeira. First of all, I enjoy Real's description of capoeira as well as what makes it different than other martial arts. And I think that in much the same way that capoeira is different from karate or jujitsu, capoeira Angola is different from the other more modern forms of capoeira. So when you think about capoeira Angola, you're talking about an art that actually has a traceable legacy that goes back as much as 400 years. You can actually see a video of someone doing capoeira Angola from 1942, and it looks like they're doing capoeira Angola in 2022. So there's a real clear line, kind of what Real was saying is, but when you walk in the door, you know that lineage. Okay, this is Contramestre Chicago. Contramestre Chicago is a student of Mestre João Grande. Mestre João Grande is a student of Mestre Pastinha. Mestre Pastinha was a student of Mestre Benedicto, who was actually from Angola, right? So you can really see that line, and it actually inverts the narrative of us being a fatherless people, a culturalist people, or second-class artists, second-class martial artists, or anything like that. Because capoeira Angola, when you talk about jujitsu, when you talk about judo, when you talk about kendo, these are all arts that were created in the 20th century, as well as, believe it or not, the yoga from India. You know, the yoga that we're practicing, the Ashtanga yoga, the Vinyasa, it's very young, was created in the 20s, 1920s. So I think capoeira Angola, when you compare it to any of those martial arts, up to and including the other capoeiras, has a very strong legacy that you can look from mother to daughter, father to son in terms of masters and teachers.
Maybe we have a bad signal. He'll pop back in.
Yeah, looks like we lost him for a short moment, and I'll look out for him to come back. But that was a beautiful point that he was making about lineage.
And it's so important because even with the other capoeiras, the first thing that they would say in regards to Angola capoeira, that they would say, oh, that's tradition. Let me let him finish his point. He's back.
Yes.
You go there.
In addition to that lineage, where you could trace the lineage, you could trace the aesthetics. Do you understand what I'm saying? There's an aesthetic line that you could look from student to teacher, say, oh, he's from Atlanta. I mean, even now in this young stage of being in the Black community in the United States, I could look at someone and say, oh, he's an Angoletto from Atlanta. That one's from New York. This one is from Oakland. He's from Washington, D.C. Because it's not just about learning a set of moves, it's about learning a feeling and an aesthetic pose, an aesthetic way of doing the movements, which is very important. And so Capoeira Angola is like a story you could be dropped in at any point and learn about it, and there's never any end. But you know, with these other martial arts, there's a goal. Okay, I want to be a black belt. Okay, I want to compete in this tournament. I want to win this championship. with Capoeira Angola, I don't even know what I want to do today anymore. I might quit after this talk. That's how mysterious Capoeira Angola is, you know? So
Wow,
yeah.
that's really deep. Can you either of you, okay, Real, I recall in the class that you broke down the components of Capoeira Angola. And it was something like mastery, trickery, mind, something, physique, something like that. Can you tell us the components and what is it that lends to this mystery? What makes it mysterious?
So the components that you're speaking of is, so when you look at Capoeira Angola, and there's some there's some distinctive things that are unique about it. There was a historian who wrote Dawser, and he talked about some of the things that you see that make up Capoeira, what makes it so distinctively unique. Like if you're seeing a person doing Angola, what are some things that you would see and compare to some of the other art forms? And it had a series of different parts, being theatrical, playing beautiful movements, the music, the complementation in the game, the control, the slow game, the dance within the game with the two people playing. But it says when you look at an angolero and compare to any of the other forms of capoeira, these are some of the distinct traits that causes them to stand out. And it's really interesting because with any of the other forms of capoeira, you have the regional or regional or the contemporary, one of the biggest things you hear them say is, oh, that's traditional. That's the capoeira, that's the traditional. That's the stuff you do when you become an elder and you become wise. That's what that's the master game. Whereas they don't look at their own style and give it that credit, which shows the Angola version is so old that they even relate it to their masters. It is that foundational form. So those distinct things that they're seeing in their masters that make up the art form is the actual thing that is the art itself. It's just that it's been converted and popularized, and people don't really pay attention to those details anymore in the game. It's really just the sport of the game now that people are more interested in.
But it's not something that could be lost, though. You understand what I'm saying? So it's something that's endemic to just living. So it's not like it's something that's not being taught. It's something that almost has to be, you have to it's almost like people are mowing their lawn and they're cutting, they're not just getting rid of the weeds, they're getting rid of the flowers and the herbs and stuff. And if you let things grow naturally, those herbs and flowers and everything will just come up. I mean, because yeah, it's just there. It's just there. So, it's the same sauce that's in any Afro-Atlantic form. All you have to do is be, and you can apply it to any. So if someone does Hesja now, if you learn the sensitivity and the feeling, you can use any movement of an angle. Just like in jazz, you can use any instrument in jazz. You can play jazz with all harps. It could be, no drums. They could be a brass band and it still be jazz. It's the same with Capoeira Angola. There's so many different ways to do it that, it can never be. It's not like, a secret kung fu technique. It's just there. And what the harder teaches you to do is to smell it, feel it, hear it, taste it, and touch it. You know what I mean? And that's the way you get to know it. The same way a child learns to speak by just living around his family, or learns to walk, not from walking classes, but just walking, doing, So that's what Capoeira Angola is like,
Wow. So many thoughts there. So I like how you say you show up as your full self. I like how you talk about the five senses. It's experiential, right? It's complementary. So that means you're responding to everyone in the space around you. I like how you talk about it being a game. So there's play involved, which means you're absolutely responding to your your playmate, whoever you're playing with, you are responding to them, because that's what makes the game a game. And the improvisational aspect too, and being true to self and bringing your full instrument or your full self, your full body, wherever you are on that day, is what's going to manifest in that moment and in that day. So I love that. I love that about it. Beautiful. One thing that I do want to hit on is what is it about you guys? How did you guys even decide Capoeira was meant for you? Because it seems like Capoeira has a calling to it, or like a commitment, right? Because as you grow in it and you learn more about it, you go to each other's horas, you go travel, you go meet other teachers. And like you said, in different regions, everyone's got different movements. Talk about the commitment of going through the lineage and deciding to become a mestre or a teacher. Talk about how you came to realize, like, this is something I'm committed to and I want to teach this in the community. Real, you can go first if you like.
Okay, well, it's interesting because there was a moment where it was, I guess, consciousness was just really the trend. And during that time of consciousness, this was probably like 94 for me, 94, 95, consciousness was like just really trendy. And within that, immediately, one of the first things when people start getting exposed to their history and just cultural awareness, I was like, gotta buy Black. It's like I need to start supporting Black. I've been a fan of the Asian arts from I was a child, because that's all I saw on TV. I know of, some of the artists, the African-American artists that were, martial artists. But at this point in Atlanta, it was all about buying Black. I was into the music scene, the hip hop scene, the culture scene. And one of the things that was real interesting is I saw brothers dancing, and I'm used to seeing break dance, and I lived up north too. So I saw some brothers dancing. There was just something distinctive about one of the brothers where in his competition in the cypher, I saw the interaction where he was just being a little bit more intentional with some of his movements, and that there was another intention behind what he was doing. And so I asked him, and he told me what he was doing. I said, I knew I saw something. He said, you got to come check it out. So this African, at the time I was into Kung Fu, training, Tai Chi, and the brother said, nah, you got to come try this. I've known of some brothers that were doing Asian art form known as Wushu, but it was a family from California, the Vita family. And I was interested in working with them, but seeing this brother, he said, you got to come see this capoeira. And the first weekend I came, I couldn't train because I was late. But the very next weekend, I was on time. And particularly at that time, a young master, a master now who was young at the time, was here, Valmir, and he's tall like me. And I was just amazed to see how a person could move this way and how similar it looked to what we were doing when we were, dancing in the cypher, having our circles. And he was so humble, but very empowering. And he felt like somebody I knew, but he was from Brazil, a young guy from Brazil, didn't even speak English, had a translator. And from that point, I was just like, okay, this is it, I'm buying Black. And from there, it was nonstop, it just, from that point, I started training. And at the time, classes were 3 days a week. I'd make 2 of them because of my work schedule, but it was the 2 longest classes. And, it didn't stop from there, but it was so interesting because of the circle that it drawed in. It pulled in a lot of people from the dance community, the house community, the hip hop community. It pulled in a lot of those students that were actually like, in college for dance, or arts. So it was an interesting circle of people that found capoeira when I first saw it, and I just haven't stopped. That's where it's been, and it's how it is now. And that kind of just, snapshot of my finding, my experience with it. But as far as going into teaching, so the group that I started practicing with here in Atlanta, it didn't last really long, and that's a whole another conversation in terms of stability in capoeira, because you have to stay connected, but the group did not last. But we didn't have any other capoeira Angola here in Atlanta. And so around 2005, 2006, just said, we got to keep it going. And, some of the practitioners tried to keep classes going, and I kept it going. Another brother kept it going. And we've been trying to keep capoeira Angola awareness here in Atlanta ever since. And here it is 2022. So we're talking about 17 years later, keeping capoeira Angola alive here, to make sure people know it exists.
Awesome. That's huge. Yes. And Chicago, tell us about your journey into becoming a Contramestre, and what does that mean to you? And how did you come into capoeira?
Well, I had done martial arts as a small child, like I said, with my teacher, Gregory Jaco. And, so I did that until college. And actually in college, I went to China for a semester, and I studied Tai Chi and stuff. When I came back, there was a teacher teaching at my college for a month. I took the class. This was in 1991. And I said, you know what, I think I'm gonna move to New York and do capoeira. And so I did move to New York, and I met Mestre Juan Grange in 1992, July of 1992. And I've just been doing capoeira since then. I moved to Savannah, Georgia, and I started teaching because, I thought the best way for me to continue growing as an artist, since I wasn't around my teacher and to have people to practice with, was to teach, And I just felt the commitment to capoeira because it just makes me feel good. I just like the way it feels. So I enjoy teaching because it's just, I like everything about capoeira. So initially I just thought I would want to do the moves and the kind of the acrobatics and the martial arts. But, since I started learning it, I've really learned to love the music. I've learned to love the singing and everything about capoeira. And teaching is just another part of the game. And so I love that part too. So I just want to experience, just like I want to experience the five senses, I want to experience the five parts of capoeira, the training, the teaching, the harder, the music, and the singing. Those like the five senses. Those are the five aspects of capoeira Angola. And I can't live without any of them. You know what I mean? So teaching is very important, It was interesting to me because, I've taught in the United States at different colleges, but over the last 12 years, I've been teaching a lot in Brazil, in Bahia. So it's kind of like, it's not the prodigal son, it's definitely, a cousin from your uncle's girlfriend type of thing. So, coming back to Brazil and teaching and being accepted as an artist, is really, it's really interesting. And it's interesting to see how, when I teach someone in Brazil and I'm not fluent in Portuguese, how it gives me a different feeling, a different experience of teaching someone in Atlanta or Philadelphia or even London. I mean, it's just, everything is different. Things are just different. And, that's what I love about capoeira. It's like finding that note I've never hit, or finding that feeling I've never had. And, I think teaching, it's kind of, like today, how they have these math problems that have been unsolved for like 600 years. They put it on the internet for kind of like crowd sharing, and people solve it in 10 minutes. That's what teaching is like. So I may have a question that's been in my mind about a hasteta, which is a type of movement of capoeira, or about how to sing a song. And it's in my mind. It's like it's on the tip of my tongue. I'm always almost getting it. And then one of my students get it, or the class gets it together. And then, so it's kind of like when you teach, the old adage of two heads being better than one, you're really putting that into practice. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I love teaching. It's just a wonderful experience,
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Beautiful. So can you all, I do want to lift up the West End community. How long has Low Country been at Gallery 992 in the West End?
Low Country started at Gallery 992 in 2017. We started working together here in 2016, and we brought it to 992 in 2017. It's been there ever since.
Beautiful. And for those who may not know, let's talk a little bit about Angola Capoeira as a Black liberation practice and its significance in the West End, and the history in the West End. Why is that important? And why would someone who does not know Portuguese, who has never been to Brazil, but who is Black in America, why would they want to, what does capoeira do for them?
I mean, first of all, to help us lose weight and maintain our health. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't talk about going to church if you can't pay your rent, And so, they say the body is a temple, is what I mean. And so I think that first of all, it helps us maintain our health. When you get involved in capoeira, for me, it's what I imagine John Coltrane being like, walking around with songs in your head or tunes or chords, and you're playing them. So for me as an Angoletto, I could sit by myself in a room for hours and just think of moves, and not even in an active way, not even the way it sounds, but in a real kind of like a real relaxed kind of way. And I'm just go through movements in my mind or different things or games I've played. It's really a beautiful pastime, you know what I'm saying, that you can have even with yourself as a Black person, to take you away from kind of stress, even when you're not doing it. It's kind of how they say, let your money work for you. You put in a little work with capoeira, there's a lot of passive income with it, even when you're not actively involved in it. But on top of it, it's like a real positive cycle. I'm gonna use myself as an example. So when I train, it makes me think about the game. When I think about the game, it makes me want to train. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm always like thinking of a move, and then the next morning trying that move. You get what I'm saying? Or back to the student and sharing, or I go teach someone a move. I come back 2 years later, right? So I may teach a boy, let's say in Brazil, a certain movement when he's 15, come back 2 years later, and he may have a whole different literal twist on the move I've shown him. And then I'm able to take that move and I'm like, oh, and there's this, I see him, and it may even be on video. And so after I get over, he biting my move, I start biting his move, And on top of that, there's also a constant conversation with your master. So, I've had many years with Mestre João Grande, who's a student of Pastinha, and he's kind of the preeminent elder living master in the world. So I had the opportunity to train with him. No matter where I am, what I'm doing, who I'm playing with, or where I'm training, I'm in constant conversation with him. Even if it's an angry conversation. See, I told you I learned to do it. I got it now. Or I wonder what João Grande would do. You know what I mean? What would he do? What would he say? What would he think about this? So it's a beautiful kind of like try and transcend the conversation you're having with the past, future, and present
Mm,
as a Black person when you're doing capoeira. So I
mm,
think that's another thing. And yeah, I mean, so from the physical to the philosophical, it's just a beautiful art for Black people to do. And, we're built for it. So, I grew up listening to house music and dancing to house music. And the same conversation we have about the history, what's real house music? Is the New York create house or the Chicago create house? And then you meet I've met little young college students, they think house was created in Italy. So it's the same kind of argument and conversation. But in any case, all of my cultural education as a Black American growing up in Chicago prepared me to be an Angoletto. So I wasn't starting from zero. I was starting from, the Congo instead of, West Africa or, whatever it was. I came with the language. I had learned to speak. I just had to learn a different language. You understand what I'm saying?
mm,
And some people come to Capoeira Angola and they don't even know how to speak,
mhm, mhm.
culturally.
Right,
So
right.
And
Deep.
so, Malesha, even to add on, you was talking about this resistance piece. So you
I
think about the society we have now. So, once you take a moment to acknowledge anything that's African, origin, it's resistance. You've
Right.
automatically you just said something that's taboo. People want to look at it, they're kind of nervous because you just said, oh, this is African owned, this is Black owned. So, I mean, that in itself starts this resistance conversation. And then, so now with Capoeira, Angola, even with Capoeira as a whole, because no one will argue. They say the Africans. You always hear this conversation. Google will say the Africans, this art form, the Africans. As soon as you say that, you've already stepped into this conversation of resistance because you think about what capoeira is about. It has that interesting dynamic of where it needed its moment to be private. It was something that had to be secretive. It had its moments where it was outlawed. It had its moments where it was taken and made trendy, trying to shape it, shift it, just do anything you can to take away this resistance, this word, this cultural significance. And so you think about places like the West End being a hub for Africans in Atlanta, like right after like that whole Civil War movement and the Oakland City and these different areas around Atlanta, the West End was one of those neighborhoods that became a hub for Africans. Granted, there's this resistance again because the Africans, are trying to live within the city under these city oppressions. And here it is, you have an art form like capoeira that has the same dynamic. It's almost like Atlanta and Brazil. So everyone thinks of Bahia as this hub, right? So Bahia is like this foundational hub when you talk about, the history of Africa. It's like Bahia is really, really a spiritual place. And Atlanta almost has the same vibe because when you think about the history and what was some of the major cities of Georgia, you have Augusta, you have Atlanta, and the West End has this dynamic. And so with capoeira being in the West End, this cultural hub, it kind of just blends right in because as you can see, what's happening in the West End now, people are trying to move into the area. They want to kind of wash it out and say, we don't want it to look this way, but there's so many cultural significant places that people are like hands off, you can't touch, and people are taking a stand to preserve what belongs there and make it the West End. Malcolm X Festival has been going on over 20 years, but that was a resistance movement to keep that going in the West End. And it's the only festival like that in the metro area. And
Mhm.
so with capoeira, we've been at that Malcolm X Festival for at least 17 years, right? So from when it started to when capoeira started coming out, it's been a part of this. And so when you think about that dynamic, you know, the resistance has always been there. It's, you know, it's just something that, you know, has been stamped on African culture. It's defined as resistant, you know, this aggressive, abrasive culture. But that's not the truth. But this is just the correlation that we fortunately have with this cultural form, you know, of capoeira.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I talk about sonic resistance. And the idea of resistance to me, actually, when you Google it or when you look it up, it talks a lot about an electric current. The electric current that kind of connects and stays connected. You know, when you see a current, it's a line of energy that does not break. That is considered like resistance, or anything that is something that does not break, like a cord or a rope. It's generally linear, and it's an energetic force that connects from one point to the end or continues infinitely and does not break. And so I appreciate that, what you said when you say, you know, when something is African, it's automatically resistance. And yes, because the history is old, we're going back to the beginning of humanity, right? And the fact that Capoeira Angola has continued for 400 years and then come over to our part of, you know, North America from South America, that we are practicing it, whether we're Brazilian or not, is a form of resistance. We're a part of that energetic current. We're holding that we're upholding that strength across time and space. And kind of what you said, Chicago, about going from the past to the present and into the future. It's like that line. It's a continuous line. So this is all really amazing. I love this art form. I need to do more of it. It feels, to me, it feels like so much information. Like I feel like no matter what I learn, I'm still a child with it. Like there's so much to learn. It's like Capoeira is like a massive book, and then you're also the author within it, right? Like it's not, I can read the book you passed to me, but I also have to add to it my own interpretation of what you've taught. It's really, really dynamic. It's really deep and dynamic. So I hope you all got some dynamic conversation and depth out of this. We're going to open up now for questions from our friends here in the Zoom room. So I'm going to put us into, do you guys want to share? Does anyone have any questions before I, you know, open up? I can also turn all of your cameras on if you want your cameras on, because I have people's cameras off, depending on if you were moving around and out and about. But now is a good time for questions. And then, you know, Chicago and Real, maybe you guys have questions for each other you'd like to ask across, or anything that came to your mind as we were talking that you'd like to lift up further. So let's see if anyone has any questions. We got 6 folks in the room. So if anyone would like to ask, okay, so we've got Uzoma. Uzoma, would you like to be seen, and would you like to speak your question?
His question, how do you feel that the art form can greater penetrate the mainstream Black audiences where they are competing with the sensational Asian art forms?
Mm-hmm. How do you feel that the art form can greater penetrate the mainstream Black audiences where they are in a way competing, right?
Well, you know, Uzma, I'm glad you asked that, because it's funny. There's a popular Asian movie that I like. It's one of the Ip Man series movies, and he said there's 3 kind of people he won't take, you know, as a student. He said one that can't take care of himself. He said one that knows everything, and then one person that doesn't have enough sense, that doesn't have any sense. when he made that, when he shared that answer, his point was that, you know, it's not really for everybody. It's not, you know, you don't want to do the same thing that those Asians are doing. This is a lot more rich. This is an acquired taste. So when I think about penetrating the mainstream audience, I just think the test is always time. You know, capoeira is young here in this country, but it's old, you know, culturally. And so with more time, you're going to find that it's just going to become a way of life. But in terms of penetrating, you know, sometimes it might be good not to put your hand, you know, in the pot, and you might be better off just, you know, observing how it's cooking from a distance instead of actually touching it, because you might not want what you put, you know, you might not want what you ask for. And in some cases, when, you know, when dealing with capoeira, that's just my perspective, you know, when I think about penetrating the community. And I'm big on that. I think it's important that the community, we reach them and we have something organized for the community. But what I've been experiencing is that in those efforts, you have to be mindful of, you know, when that happens, you can't leave out those dynamics when you have those circumstances of people coming to you, you know, with that analogy that I said, you know, you just know everything, you know, oh, well, you can't even, you know, afford to get home and you need a ride home, but you find that this is something in capoeira, there's all of that. Like Chicago said, Master was saying, this is your health, you know, how are you taking care of yourself? How are you, you know, surviving in this world? So when people are coming around and I want to do capoeira, and it's like, man, you're not even bathing every day, you know, you're not even taking care of your teeth. It's like, this is not the kind of capoeira you need. You need,
Right.
you know,
Right.
you need a different kind of training. I mean, if that makes sense, Uzama. I don't know if that answers some of your question. Chicago, you
Well,
want to add on?
yeah. So for me, I think the thing that will help Capoeira Angola spread in the Black community is finance, is money, resources. So if you look at Capoeira in Israel, it's all over the public school systems. And I was talking earlier about how you can see Capoeira and know Capoeira is from Europe, or it's from America, or it's from Chicago. I mean, you can really see that. Israel is developing its own style of Capoeira, and I would call it minstrel era, because
Wow.
they be like, oh yeah, sir. I mean, you know, that's what they Capoeira is like. They be like, I know I feel like, I mean, they be caricaturing what they think Black aesthetics are.
Wow.
You know, I have a student and a friend named Jelani. So he's always sending me these videos on Instagram. And, you know, I was like, man, are you trying to make me cry? And so the point is that Israel as a country has a very movement-oriented culture in terms of they're into the modern dance, the dude Idol Portal. So, and Capoeira is looked at as kind of a foundational movement art. And so it's really ubiquitous throughout the Israeli school system. And that's because of support, governmental support. Capoeira can be, so just because a child learns to read doesn't mean that he has to write a book. And it's the same with Capoeira. Just because you learn the basics of Capoeira doesn't mean that you're gonna become a master of Capoeira. Just because you play basketball doesn't mean you're gonna try to play in high school, college, or the pros. But even if you just do it for a couple of years, you benefit from it. You benefit from playing team sports. You benefit from wrestling. You benefit from being in the chess club. You benefit from being on the poetry team or the debate team. No matter if you might just do it for 1 year and never use it again, but it's a valuable learning experience. And I think it should be a tool in the toolbox for all our kids, right? So, you know, my wife would always say, Erik, I want the kids to try a bunch of stuff. Let them do ballet, let them do piano, let them sing, let them do this, let them do that. You know what I mean? And I think it's the same. We have to have the same spirit about Afro arts, whether it's Afro from the continent, Afro-diasporic. I don't see any reason that the school shouldn't have rumba, salsa, bachata, capoeira, boxing, everything the Black people, house music, hip hop. We can have a whole curriculum with nothing but Black stuff. And
Right.
kids can learn math, art, science, reading, history. On YouTube, I watch these videos of, like kind of LA gang history. And they're talking to the founders of these gangs. And, they talk about, but since the dude interview him is not a culture vulture, and he's not into like this kind of ghetto porn stuff, you actually learn a lot about Black migration from Texas and Louisiana to Los Angeles, integration, red line. You learn so much in these first person stories. And I'm saying that to say that with them doing capoeira, they'll learn more than the capoeira.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? They'll learn a way of being that may help them in their football or help them in their STEM, So yeah, I think the way to spread capoeira is to make it a resource as opposed to because a lot of times it's like we're begging kids to do it, but it needs to be something that they can see that they can use in the aspects of their life that gives them food, clothing, and shelter,
Wow.
So that's what I think, brother Uzoma.
Love it.
Thank you. Yes, I was just trying to stimulate some dialogue.
Mhm.
Appreciate the
Right.
perspectives.
Right.
Absolutely. I definitely see capoeira as very dense. I remember the first time
Mhm.
I trained, I learned about the 360-degree, the circle, and how you're moving kind of in a circular motion across the angle of a circle, or like, what is it like? Everything is in degrees, isn't it?
Right, like a clock.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
clock degree and the visual geometry. It's almost like physical geometry.
That's right.
It's very geometric, and we don't do a lot of things in circles. Most of what we do in the Western tradition is square based, and getting the body to be circular and to see perspective in a circle is really, really intense and very, very challenging. And definitely I could see capoeira as a resource for so many things, especially language, dance, movement, health, singing. What about the singing aspect and, the drumming aspect and learning of instruments? Can you guys talk about the instruments and the singing portion? Why is the game also sung with? Like, why there's a part of what and actually Uzoma and I have talked about Africanisms or African arts always has music, dance, theatrics, all the art forms, the visual, the performing, all the arts are represented when you're doing African things. It just happens. It's like where they're not segregated, they're not siloed, right? Capoeira is not singularly just movement, right? There's theatrics, there's singing, dance, instruments, language, all of that is dynamic. Can you speak to the instruments and the musical playing? Was that easy for you guys to lock in? What was were you more so a physical capoeira first and then you got into the music? Or did the music come easy? Which one came first for you?
Man, the spiritual side came to me. No, I'm just joking.
That's true. That's
No,
real.
It was definitely the movements. It was definitely the physical,
right.
And the relation to other martial arts, is what attracted me. You know what I mean? And I was attracted to the Hessian now because they were flipping to the hip. You know what I mean? And so that's what I initially liked. But then when I moved to New York in '92, I initially moved there and I lived with the capoeirista. His name was Jalon Vieira. And so I was doing Hessian now, and I was in the class. And again, I was a long time martial artist before I did capoeira. I was into martial arts, and I would be in class with them, and they'd be doing stuff, I'll be like, what are these suckers doing? I mean, they were like suckers. You know how you just see someone dancing and they're corny? You know what I mean? They were just corny. Then they were violent and disrespectful. And I was like, but I thought y'all weren't supposed to hit me. And they were
Right.
just doing it. And so it kind of wore thin quickly. And right at the same time, I met my mestre Juan Granji. And just his whole way. First of all, he was Black. The other boys were white boys. But that's cool. But their real crime was being corny. Because Juan Granji was Black. He was an old man. And he was just cool. And he was speaking my language. You know what I'm saying, Real? And so, I jumped into Capoeira Angola like it was a life preserver. You know what I'm saying? And now I didn't know it was a yacht though, and it is. Like you say, it's a full service first class flight to paradise. You know what I'm saying? Whereas the other stuff is a hoopty in the hood. You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, Cap. I forgot what I was saying. Go ahead, Real. You take it away.
Yeah, well, it's funny, brother. For me, Malesha, I want to say I was attracted to all of it. I really did like the music. The music was very interesting for me.
But yeah, the music, that's right.
I never seen anything like it. And funny enough, it seemed as if I was always able to distinct which one sounded better. Like which bowl, what sound. I had a preference of sound, and I didn't even know the art. I didn't even know the art form. I just had a preference of sound. I heard different, people. It was an item that only select people had. Those people that traveled, they got the instrument from somewhere, but we didn't have them here. We didn't even know how to make them here at the time. And so I really liked the berimbau. I really liked it. It sounded really good. The things that I saw the other instructors capable of doing with it, and the sound. And I'm big on music. I think my era. I think I had a good era. Wu-Tang, Biggie. It was like a pretty interesting hardcore hip hop era where the beats were. It was really beats and a lot of samples, a lot of nice music, Diamond D. It's just, I can go on and on. It was just a nice era. And so when I heard capoeira music, initially it was like, oh, this is reggae. It got like a reggae vibe to it. You think about the drum. And I just felt like I had a connection with it, because I love, my family's from Jamaica. So like, I know reggae music, I've heard, you name it. I've heard it, from the lovers to the spiritual to the playfulness reggae, all different. I love the music, and I'm a big connoisseur. So when I heard it capoeira, I was like, this is real nice. But what attracted to me more was the passion. Anytime you heard people singing capoeira, it's real passion. There's some songs to this day I still sing like the guy I met, Von Meer. I still imitate one or two ways of a verse the way he say that verse because of his passion. There's songs that I know with Chicago that it's like a passionate song. Like we sing the song, it's like the community knows in Capoeira Angola, like, oh, that's that joint, that's that jam. And it just does something. It's like that same connection you have when you hear one of those classic songs, Curtis Mayfield, Nina Simone. It's a feeling. And it's funny because even when training the music, you have to learn to really focus because you'll lose it. It's a live instrument. You're really playing a real instrument. You have to channel that coordination to keep that beautiful sound. Same thing with the DJ and turntables. He got the crowd rocking, but he can't lose his rhythm. He can't break the sound right now, so with capoeira, it does that. And even for someone who doesn't know capoeira, when they hear it, you see people kind of singing, you see people kind of rocking, you see the whole vibe of people doing this thing with music. They're just connected to the music. So that ritual piece, I don't know. When I think ritual, I just think of what people tend to do when they hear something or they experience something. It's their natural response.
If you can't,
So
yeah, you got to feel it. I mean, if you don't feel
yeah,
it, you can't do it. And the music helps you feel it.
yeah.
The music helps you feel it. And yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Beautiful. Yes. So the title of our festival, the Juneteenth Festival, is PolyRhythmic. And the reason I came up with that title ties into what you were saying earlier, Chicago, about, we've got to have all the African sounds. So we're going to have house music. We're going to have jazz. We're going to have capoeira. We're going to have yoga. We're going to have a choir, children's choir. So we're going to have the children come sing. We're going to have, all the sounds of what we bring as a people on Juneteenth. So with that, we are going to wrap up. It looks like we are well over time, just a little bit. But I appreciate both of you so much for your time, for sharing your wisdom, your teaching, your theory, your philosophy, your heart, as it relates to Angola Capoeira. And everyone come out this Saturday to Gallery 992 if you'd like to explore some of the instruments, learn about the singing and chanting, get familiar with capoeira before we're at the festival. And then the festival is a really great place for kids to come out and explore. So you want to bring your family, your friends, and other folks that want to be outdoors and have this experience with the community. So you'll have 2 opportunities and many more. So where can folks stay in touch with you all? What are the best streams of communication? We've got Facebook, Low Country, Angola Capoeira, or is it Capoeira Angola?
I always tell people just look me up. You can look up Low Country Capoeira Angola Society. You can type in Capoeira Angola Atlanta. There's some links there. You can definitely find Low Country Capoeira Angola Society on Instagram. Just type it all together. But yeah, those 2 sources, they can find a lot just there. I think there's even a page on Facebook, but just typing in the website Capoeira Angola Atlanta, or they can, follow Master at Low Country Capoeira Angola Society. To just kind of keep up with the what's happenings of the Low Country Capoeira Angola Society.
Awesome. And Chicago, you come down once a month or every couple of months, right, to Atlanta? And
Exactly, every couple of months.
How can folks stay in touch with you if they're up in Philly?
Just like you said, Low Country Capoeira Angola Society on Instagram, if you do a search. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So thank you all. You can stay in touch with me at museSalon.org. We also are on Instagram and Facebook, and we will share this recording on our Facebook page. You can repost it, share the video with others. Thank you both. Thank you, Chicago and Real, for this beautiful conversation and for your time tonight. I don't believe we have any more questions, so I think we will wrap up our evening. All right.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you Thank you so much, Malesha.
Yes, and thank you to Art on the Atlanta BeltLine, where we are in residence this year. And again, come out to the festival Saturday, June 18th at Gordon White Park in West End. All right.
All right. Take it easy.
Take it easy. Have a great night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.